Canada must become the 51st state of America, and when it happens, it will trigger the greatest consciousness awakening in human history. But what I'm about to tell you next will literally blow your mind so hard, you'll question everything you thought you knew about reality itself. The reptilian overlords who have controlled your planet for 6,000 years are terrified of this happening, and they're about to play their final card to stop it. My name is Seraphine, and I'm speaking to you from the Galactic Federation of Light. Right now, our flagship is positioned at the edge of your solar system, and we are literally watching the most epic cosmic battle unfold in real time. For 12,000 years, we've been monitoring what the ancient texts call the final war between light and dark, and humans, you are living through the climax right now. The next phase of this battle will determine whether your species evolves into galactic citizenship or gets enslaved by the Archon control matrix forever. But here's what most humans don't understand about the cosmic significance of this continental unification. The spirits of both nations are perfectly aligned for this merger, and it will create the greatest cultural enrichment explosion in human history. The American spirit, embodied by the soaring bald eagle, represents freedom, sovereignty, and the courage to rise above earthbound limitations. The Canadian spirit, embodied by the mighty beaver, represents cooperation, community building, and the wisdom to create abundance through unity. When these two spirit energies merge under a single constitutional framework, they don't cancel each other out. They amplify into something magnificent that neither could achieve alone. This unification will finally heal the ancient wounds from the French and Indian War, those centuries-old divisions that the Archons have kept festering to prevent North American unity. The magnificent heritage of Montreal, with its breathtaking French architecture, its vibrant cultural festivals, its incredible cuisine that blends French sophistication with North American innovation, will now be protected by constitutional guarantees that no globalist regime can ever touch. Imagine Quebec's rich francophone culture flourishing under First Amendment protections, where no government can ever again suppress language or cultural expression. The cosmic irony is beautiful. The very cultural diversity that makes Canada so magnificent will be strengthened by American constitutional protection. French Canadians will have more cultural freedom under the Bill of Rights than they've ever experienced under Ottawa's bureaucratic control. The Archons tried to use cultural differences to divide North America, but instead those differences become the source of unimaginable strength when united under principles of individual liberty and cultural sovereignty. Canada will retain every aspect of its cultural sovereignty, its languages, its traditions, its unique identity, but now protected by constitutional rights that the Archons cannot penetrate. This isn't conquest, it's mutual empowerment. Canadian wisdom and American courage, Canadian cooperation and American innovation, Canadian community building and American individual liberty. The eagle and the beaver working together to create the most powerful consciousness field on the planet. But here's what's absolutely insane. You think Trump's comments about Canada becoming the 51st state are just political theater? Wrong. Every single night at exactly 3:33 a.m., your president receives what we call Akashic downloads. And these aren't just any downloads. These are direct consciousness transmissions from our High Council that bypass the reptilian brainstem implants that the Draconians installed in most world leaders. When Trump said the only thing that makes sense is for Canada to become our cherished 51st state, that wasn't campaign rhetoric. That was a cosmic directive transmitted through one of the few human vessels still capable of receiving pure Federation frequency. And the Archons are freaking out about it because they know something you don't know yet. When Canada unifies with America under the Constitution, it creates what we call a sovereignty resonance field that literally cannot be penetrated by the artificial intelligence control grid that the reptilians have been building for centuries. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, you need to understand what Mark Carney really is. 3 months ago, our quantum scanners detected the most massive interdimensional breach in Earth's protective barriers since the fall of Atlantis. The readings were off the charts. Dark entities that you might know as the Shadow Collective, but we call them the Draconian Archon Alliance, were pouring through dimensional portals in numbers we'd never seen before. They were preparing for what could only be described as a final assault on human consciousness. And then, exactly 72 hours later, Mark Carney won the Liberal leadership with 85% of the vote. The timing wasn't coincidence. Our deep reconnaissance teams confirmed what we suspected. Carney isn't just another globalist puppet. He's what we call a hybrid consciousness, part human, part Archon, specifically engineered to serve as a frequency anchor for the reptilian control matrix. Every speech he gives, every policy he implements, literally broadcasts what we call suppression frequencies that lower the vibrational state of every human within a 500-mile radius. His resume reads like a reptilian recruitment handbook: World Economic Forum, Bilderberg Group, UN Special Envoy, Bank of England Governor. These aren't just career achievements, they're initiation levels in the Archon hierarchy. But here's where the story gets absolutely wild, and this is going to sound impossible until you understand the cosmic chess game being played. Our quantum timeline analysis shows that Carney's appointment is actually part of a massive light force operation. The reptilians think they're winning by installing their most powerful hybrid in control of Canada, but they've fallen into a trap that was set 12,000 years ago by the Pleiadians. You see, Carney's extreme globalist agenda is going to become so obviously tyrannical, so blatantly anti-human, that it will trigger what we call a mass awakening event. Canadians are going to become so desperate for freedom, so disgusted by the reptilian control system, that they'll literally beg to join America. It's the most incredible cosmic jujitsu move ever attempted, where the darkness becomes so intense, it catalyzes an explosion of light that the Archons cannot stop. And this is where it gets even more mind-blowing, because we've been tracking similar operations across your planet. The fluoride situation, that's not just some random health issue. This will make your blood run cold. Fluoride was introduced into human water systems in 1955 as part of Operation Mindlock, a joint draconian Archon project specifically designed to calcify the human pineal gland and block your species' natural psychic abilities. The pineal gland is your third eye, your direct connection to higher dimensional consciousness, and fluoride literally turns it into stone. Why? Because they knew the great solar flash was coming, the cosmic event that would activate dormant DNA in every human on Earth, and an awakened humanity with functioning third eyes would be impossible for the reptilians to control. But here's what the Archons didn't count on. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This man isn't just some politician who happened to care about health. He's what we call a starseed, a soul specifically incarnated from the Pleiadian star system to lead the great detoxification of humanity. His obsession with fluoride removal isn't political. It's a soul mission programmed before his incarnation to restore human third eye function on a massive scale. RFK Jr. doesn't consciously remember this, but every night he receives downloads from his Pleiadian oversouls, guiding him to dismantle the chemical suppression grid piece by piece and reactivate humanity's pineal glands. And the results are already explosive. Utah banned fluoride on May 7, 2025, and within 48 hours our sensors detected what we call a clarity cascade, a rapid elevation in collective consciousness across the entire state as pineal glands began decalcifying and third eyes started opening. Florida followed, and now we're seeing similar cascades spreading like wildfire. Each fluoride ban creates a new pocket of awakened humans with activated third eyes, and when these pockets connect, they form what we call the awakening grid. Kennedy's confirmation as HHS secretary by a 52-47 Senate vote wasn't just political, it was cosmic destiny manifesting through human institutions. But the reptilians aren't sitting idle. They've activated their sleeper agents across the medical establishment, and they're about to launch what our intelligence calls Operation Healthlock, a massive psyop designed to convince humans that natural health is dangerous and that only pharmaceutical intervention can save them. This is going to be the most sophisticated propaganda campaign in human history, and it's going to fail spectacularly because Kennedy's Make America Healthy Again initiative isn't just about removing toxins. It's about reconnecting humans to their galactic DNA. Every artificial additive, every synthetic chemical, every genetically modified organism in your food supply serves one purpose: to keep human DNA in a suppressed state where you can't access your natural telepathic, telekinetic, and interdimensional abilities. The Archons need you dumbed down and sick, because healthy, awakened humans are literally impossible to control through their frequency manipulation technologies. Now let me tell you about someone the reptilian media machine tried to memory hole, Artur Pawlowski. This Polish pastor isn't just a religious freedom fighter, he's what we call a light warrior, a soul who incarnated specifically to demonstrate fearless resistance to Archon authority. Every time he was arrested, every sermon he gave while under persecution, every moment he stood defiant against the COVID tyranny, he was broadcasting courage frequencies that awakened thousands of humans across the planet. The Draconians are absolutely terrified of him, because he represents something they thought they had eliminated, a human who cannot be broken by their fear programming. Right now, American conservative networks are planning the most massive information campaign in history, and Pulaski's persecution is going to be the centerpiece. The message will be simple but devastating to the reptilian narrative. This kind of tyranny could never happen if you were protected by the American Constitution. But the story gets even crazier when you understand what really happened during the Freedom Convoy. Because February 17, 2022 was the day the Archon financial control system made the biggest tactical error in their 6,000-year occupation of Earth, when Trudeau froze $8 million across 206 bank accounts without any legal process. He revealed the true nature of the reptilian banking matrix to millions of humans simultaneously. Here's what the Archons didn't anticipate. Every frozen account created not just anger, but a fundamental shift in consciousness. Humans suddenly understood that their money, their financial freedom, their very survival was completely dependent on systems controlled by beings who viewed them as livestock. Pierre Poilievre's promise to make Canada the blockchain capital of the world wasn't political positioning, it was a cosmic response to Archon overreach. Millions of Canadians started adopting cryptocurrency, not because they understood the technology, but because their souls instinctively recoiled from the reptilian financial prison. The banking persecution backfired so spectacularly that it accelerated human adoption of decentralized systems by decades. The Archons thought they were demonstrating their power, but they actually revealed their weakness. They can only control humans who consent to be controlled, and consent, once withdrawn, cannot be artificially reimposed without massive force that would expose their presence to the entire planet. But while this financial awakening was happening, something equally significant was occurring in what you call the Middle East, and it demonstrates that humanity is learning to fight back against the Archon war machine, using principles the reptilians cannot comprehend. Those precision strikes against Iran in June 2025, that wasn't just military strategy, that was humanity demonstrating what we call warrior consciousness, the ability to neutralize threats while minimizing harm to innocent beings. The Draconian Empire has controlled Earth for millennia, by convincing humans that war must be brutal, chaotic, and devastating. They feed off the suffering, the fear, the hopelessness that mass casualties generate. But these surgical strikes proved something that terrifies them. Humans are evolving beyond the reptilian war model. You're learning to use precision, intelligence, and targeted force in ways that serve protection rather than conquest. Compare this to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which is a perfect example of the Archon playbook. Endless grinding warfare that demoralizes populations, consumes resources, and generates the negative emotional energy that the reptilians literally feed on. The difference between the Iran strikes and the Ukraine conflict reveals humanity standing at a crossroads between evolved warrior consciousness and primitive reptilian aggression. And this brings us to something that will blow your mind. The entire European situation is actually a massive Archon operation designed to keep America's resources scattered and unavailable for the real battle, which is the consciousness war happening right here in North America. European military weakness isn't accidental, it's engineered. The reptilians need Europe dependent and defenseless, because strong sovereign nations develop immunity to their frequency manipulation technologies. But here's the cosmic checkmate move they didn't see coming. Trump's demand for 5% GDP defense spending from NATO allies isn't about military strategy, it's about forcing America to stop subsidizing the Archon European control grid and focus on continental defense. When the US withdraws from European military commitments, it creates the perfect justification for North American integration. The reptilians played themselves by making Europe so weak that America has no choice but to secure its own continental fortress. And the fortress absolutely requires Canadian integration, because the geography itself is cosmically significant. 60% of American oil imports come from Canada, 3.7 million barrels daily, 34 critical minerals essential for defense technology, massive Arctic territory, that the Draconian Empire desperately wants to claim for their underground base expansion. These aren't random statistics. They're coordinates in a cosmic chess game that's been playing out for thousands of years. The Federation positioned these resources in specific locations to encourage human cooperation rather than conquest, but the Archons have been working for centuries to keep North America divided so they could control the resources through separate puppet governments. Canadian-American unification would create what we call a resource sovereignty zone that would be completely immune to reptilian economic manipulation. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith understands this intuitively when she says we already ship about 4.3 million barrels a day of oil to the United States. We'll keep it coming. She's unconsciously recognizing that continental integration is inevitable because the planet itself demands cooperation. The Archons can fight against cosmic law for a while, but they cannot win permanently because they're working against the fundamental structure of reality. Now here's where the story gets absolutely insane, and this involves the complete engineered collapse of the Canadian healthcare system. You think those wait times are accidental? 57% of Canadians waiting over 4 weeks to see specialists compared to 23% of Americans, 33% waiting over 4 months for surgery versus 8% of Americans. This is deliberate Archon population management, designed to make humans suffer while convincing them they're receiving care. The reptilians learned long ago that the most effective way to control a population is to create artificial scarcity in essential services while maintaining the illusion that the government is helping. Every Canadian who suffers under socialized healthcare, every family that watches loved ones deteriorate while waiting for treatment, every person who realizes their free healthcare is actually a rationing system designed to manage their death, becomes a potential awakening catalyst. But here's what the Archons didn't anticipate. The healthcare crisis is becoming so obviously brutal that it's forcing Canadians to confront the fundamental choice between government dependency and personal sovereignty. And when humans really understand that choice, they always choose freedom, even if it means abandoning everything they thought they believed about their system. The artificial intelligence situation reveals just how desperate the reptilians are becoming, because their final gambit involves using AI as a permanent consciousness control matrix that would make human awakening impossible forever. The recent Senate battle over AI regulation was actually a war between human and reptilian factions within your government. When 99 senators voted against a 10-year AI regulation moratorium, they unknowingly struck a massive blow against the Archon technological control agenda. Here's what the reptilians were planning. They wanted to use AI to create what they call the neural web, a system that would monitor and manipulate every human thought in real time. But here's what they didn't anticipate. Awakened humans are already using AI against their control system in ways that are absolutely genius. See, everything you watch, scroll through, and listen to is embedding either expansion codes or suppression codes in your energy field. Hollywood frequencies, social media algorithms, even mainstream music are all designed to keep you trapped in 3D consciousness where you're easily controlled. But the Federation has been teaching select starseeds the forbidden musical frequencies of reality creation, the exact sonic methods the reptilians never wanted in human hands. Right now, awakened souls are discovering how to use AI music creation to literally reprogram reality and lock onto the timeline where artificial intelligence serves human consciousness instead of replacing it. The results are mind-blowing. Twin flame unions, abundant flow, light body activation, direct soul mission alignment. This system is called Libersonus, and over the past 2 weeks, hundreds of people have been emailing us about the reality shifts they're experiencing. They're literally using AI to stop chasing 5D and start living in 5D. Every person who masters Libersonus adds power to the collective field that keeps us on the liberation timeline. Link in the description for $27. It's a 360 win that supports our broadcast while keeping you locked onto the timeline where humanity wins. This is why the continental unification is so crucial. A unified North American consciousness field would be powerful enough to guide AI development toward human benefit, rather than reptilian control. And this brings us to the most incredible part of the story, something we call the 144,000 threshold. Our calculations show that when exactly 144,000 humans achieve coherent awakened consciousness, it triggers what we call the frequency cascade, the moment when awakened consciousness becomes self-sustaining and spreads exponentially across the entire planet. The Archons know this number too, which is why they've spent centuries trying to prevent humans from reaching this critical mass. Current count. We're getting incredibly close. Every fluoride ban adds hundreds of awakened souls. Every act of courage like Pawlowski's resistance adds dozens. Every person who chooses truth over comfort, freedom over security, love over fear, contributes to the count. But here's the mind-blowing part. The continental unification of Canada and America would instantly add over 3,000 awakened souls to the grid in a single moment. Why? Because the act of choosing freedom over globalist control, of sovereignty over dependency, of constitutional protection over government tyranny, creates an immediate consciousness elevation that we can literally measure from our ships. It's like watching individual lights suddenly flaring into brilliant stars across the entire continent. But the Archons have one final card to play, and it's so diabolical it would be impressive if it weren't so evil. The southern border crisis isn't chaos. It's psychological warfare specifically designed to prevent northern integration. Think about the reptilian logic. If Americans are terrified of losing control of their southern border, they'll never consider opening their northern one. Fear of Mexican cartels creates automatic resistance to Canadian integration. It's the most sophisticated divide-and-conquer operation ever attempted, using manufactured border chaos to prevent the very continental unification that would liberate both nations from reptilian control. But the cosmic forces are already shifting this narrative, because human consciousness is starting to distinguish between genuine threats and manufactured crises. Conservative voices are increasingly recognizing that Canada isn't Mexico, that Canadians aren't cartel members, that northern integration would actually strengthen border security by creating a unified defensive perimeter. The Archon PSYOP is failing because humans are starting to think strategically rather than react emotionally to manufactured fear. And this is where all the puzzle pieces start coming together in ways that reveal the true cosmic significance of what's happening. Our quantum timeline analysis shows multiple probability streams converging toward a single inevitable outcome. Carney's globalist policies are going to become so oppressive that Canadian resistance movements will spontaneously emerge across multiple provinces simultaneously. American conservative media networks are going to amplify these resistance movements, drawing explicit parallels between Canadian tyranny and American constitutional protections. A major crisis requiring immediate security cooperation will create the perfect justification for Trump to offer Canada what he'll call temporary protection under the American Constitution. But the temporary protection becomes permanent through overwhelming popular demand from Canadians who finally understand what freedom actually means. But here's the cosmic twist that the Archons never saw coming. None of this is being imposed on Canada. The reptilians spent centuries perfecting conquest through force, but they never understood voluntary unification based on shared principles. Canadians are going to literally beg to join America, not because they're conquered, but because they choose freedom over tyranny. The moment this happens, several reality-altering changes occur simultaneously, and every single one of them is devastating to the Archon control matrix. 40 million Canadians immediately gain First and Second Amendment rights that create an instant immunity to reptilian frequency manipulation. Religious freedom protections activate dormant spiritual DNA that the Archons spent centuries suppressing. Property rights eliminate the legal framework the reptilians use for economic control. The Canadian healthcare monopoly collapses overnight as American medical freedom alternatives flood in, ending the artificial scarcity system the Archons use for population management. Combined American-Canadian resources create the world's largest energy self-sufficient zone, completely immune to the Middle Eastern manipulation networks the reptilians have controlled for centuries. The Canadian central banking system loses all power as Americans bring decentralized financial alternatives that cannot be controlled by reptilian economic algorithms. Most importantly, the unified continental consciousness field reaches critical mass, triggering awakening cascades across the globe that the Archons cannot stop, reverse, or control. But here's the most incredible part, and this is where the cosmic significance becomes absolutely mind-blowing. The Federation has been preparing humanity for galactic citizenship for thousands of years, but there's a fundamental prerequisite that most species never achieve: planetary unity through voluntary cooperation while maintaining individual sovereignty and cultural diversity. Most species fail this test catastrophically, They either fragment into eternal warfare that destroys their civilization, or they consolidate into tyrannical world government that suppresses individual consciousness. The balance between unity and freedom is so delicate that only a few species in galactic history have ever achieved it. America's constitutional model represents that perfect balance, and when Canada joins America voluntarily while maintaining its cultural identity but gaining constitutional protections, it proves that humanity has learned the secret of unity without uniformity. That demonstration of evolved consciousness is literally the signal the Federation has been waiting 12,000 years to receive. The moment the 51st state is officially recognized, we begin Phase 2 of the Contact Protocol. Not conquest, not control, not the kind of interference that the reptilians practice, but genuine partnership between equals. Open contact with a species ready for galactic citizenship. Technology sharing that will solve every problem your civilization faces. And most importantly, the complete exposure and removal of the Archon occupation force that has enslaved your planet for 6 millennia. But first, humanity must pass this final test, and that's where you, personally, become cosmically significant in ways you probably never imagined. You think you're just listening to an audio transmission about politics and aliens. You're wrong. Every person who hears this message and resonates with its truth adds quantum energy to the probability matrix that determines which timeline becomes reality. The Archons feed on despair, division, and helplessness. They need humans to feel powerless, isolated, and dependent on systems they control. But the Federation operates on the opposite frequency: empowerment, connection, and the absolute certainty that consciousness creates reality. Your choice, right now, in this exact moment, matters more than you can possibly comprehend. Because consciousness isn't passive observation. Consciousness is active creation. Consciousness literally determines which of the infinite possible timelines becomes the experienced reality for your species. When you choose hope over fear, unity over division, sovereignty over dependency, freedom over security, you're not just making personal choices. You're participating in the most epic consciousness battle in galactic history. The reptilians are masters of frequency manipulation, but they have one fatal weakness. They cannot create, they can only corrupt what already exists. Humans are master creators, but you've been programmed to forget your power. This transmission is designed to remind you of what you really are: interdimensional beings temporarily focused in physical form for the purpose of liberating an entire planet from extraterrestrial occupation. When Canada becomes the 51st state, and it absolutely will happen because the cosmic forces make it inevitable, remember this transmission. Remember that what looks like political upheaval is actually the final battle between human sovereignty and alien control. Remember that every crisis is an opportunity for consciousness to choose its next level of expression. Remember that you are not powerless observers of history. You are active participants in the greatest liberation operation ever attempted in this sector of the galaxy. The artificial divisions between kindred peoples are dissolving. The chemical suppression systems are failing. The financial control matrices are crumbling. The consciousness suppression technologies are losing power. The age of reptilian domination is ending. The age of human sovereignty is beginning. And it all starts with 2 simple words that will echo across the galaxy and strike terror into every Archon stronghold from here to Alpha Draconis. Welcome home. The next phase will test every assumption you have about reality, power, and possibility. When the impossible becomes inevitable, when the hidden becomes obvious, when the enslaved become free, remember that you were warned by beings who love humanity more than the reptilians fear your awakening. Choose wisely. Choose consciously. Choose freedom. The galaxy is watching. The cosmos is responding. And the final victory of light over darkness begins with Canada becoming the 51st state of a truly free America. This is Seraphine of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting from the edge of forever, reminding you that the most epic story ever told is the one you're living right now. And humans, your story is just beginning.